Hello and welcome to this very exciting episode of the Sovereign Society podcast. I'm so excited to be sharing with you my guest today. I have Natalie Brite here. And I first found Natalie because she was liking a lot of my posts and stuff on Instagram. And then I was like, wow, her branding's on point. I was like, wow, her message is on point. Like, cool, a soul sister. And then I was like, I just need to reach out to her. I need her on the podcast. And so, guys, dreams come true. That happen. It takes that inspired action. And that's, I know, what we're going to be talking a lot about today. We're just allowing ourselves to be in this open channel to align to whatever wants to roll through and to be in that space. So I want to thank you so much, Natalie, for you doing your work and you being here and you helping people align to who they are, to their message, to their purpose. So I just want to thank you for that.
Yes, thank you. And you know what's so funny? I'm glad you actually brought up that about like the Instagram creeping and stuff like that, because I don't know how I stumbled upon your podcast. I usually listen to podcasts a lot, like while I'm driving in the car, and I was driving and somehow, weirdest thing in the world, like your podcast popped up. I was like, wonder what this is. And I started checking it out. I'm like, who the hell is this chick? And it like blew my mind. So I just had to kind of come back and share that in response.
Amazing. Yeah. These weird synchronicities and how things kind of unfold, you just have to keep trusting it.
Yeah.
Then see what kind of unfolds from that. So I love hearing that.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, it's funny because I was speaking at my alma mater yesterday about podcast marketing, and knowing that I was also having this conversation with you today. And it was funny because I know my marketing professor from years ago, he was like, I want you to speak about podcast marketing. And what was important for me was to speak about my journey, for me to speak about my medicine, because I don't have sponsors other than myself for the podcast or anything else. So it's just me allowing myself to be me allowing myself to speak my truth and be in my flow. That is what's brought me up to like number 28 on the charts in spirituality. It's just through that space. So I think it was really important for me to share with the students, like, it's not so much of a marketing strategy as much as it is about you being you. And then as you allow yourself to be you, the opportunities unfold because you have it all within you. You already know.
Yep, 100%. And I think that's such a powerful message to share with anybody, regardless of like what method or platform they're using. It's like, you don't need all the shiny, fancy stuff to still like totally kick ass and thrive at whatever it is you're trying to create. You have that alignment within that is such a magnet,
Absolutely. Yeah. So, I mean, I would love to hear about your story, about what brought you into this realm of becoming a coach when you just, took that risk and that leap of faith, and here you are.
Yeah, man, it's been such a, like, honestly, it's like month by month now. I'm sure you feel like this too, where like every month I'm like, whoa, totally different me now. Like, it's like this weird unfolding and evolution that I'm pretty much at this point just like surrendering and being like, wherever it goes, I'm just going with it. But that's how I've approached pretty much everything from the get-go, was just like this little, oh, that sounds fun. Let's see where this goes. Or, okay, this sounds exciting. Let's see where this goes. And just kind of allowing, like naturally allowing, like, I never really had those like initial, you'll hear a lot like entrepreneurs being like, I'm so scared. I'm scared. Like what are people going to think, or what's going to happen? Or I was just like, whatever, and that's what got me into starting my own business, was simply that little, like, this sounds good. This could help me. This could help others. And that was like the snowball that and then it just kept, the more I kind of followed that, the more I kind of gained clarity on what is my medicine, or what is that thing, or what is helping me to wake up, or, and it was just like, I just kept following it. And then here we are.
It's so amazing. Yeah, because I know everyone's like, what's the strategy? What's the strategy? And I think that's so much of what has shifted in business, you know, and I know that was another thing that I was teaching about too, is like, there's new business. Like new business is about alignment. It's not about hustle. It's about you working smarter instead of harder. What lights you up? Follow that. How can you what do you see is making an impact in the collective, right? And what's the vision? What's your sacred why? What's your intention?
Yep, 100%. And I think we are seeing such a cool shift right now where it's almost like you can start seeing like left and right, especially on social media, of like little light bulbs going off where it's like, oh, they're getting it. It doesn't have to be hard. It doesn't have to be this like, rigid, boxy, robotic thing anymore. And I think it's almost scary to think about that we are in that area right now where we could go one of two ways. We could go more of like the freedom way of just surrender, allow, have fun, live in alignment, or we could go more of that, like basically taking the 9-to-5 structure and turning it into entrepreneurship. Cause that's, it's like, we're on that fine line of, you can either take the same thing you're trying to get away from the rigid corporate America structure, or just, shift into that flow space. And we're getting there.
Yeah. And that's what I was teaching the kids. He was like, well, what would you say to someone who wants to start a podcast, for instance? I was like, what's your sacred why? How do you see it making an impact in the world, and allow yourself to have fun? And
Yep.
I think that's where a lot of people, like the older paradigm of business, are kind of like scratching their head of like, what is this fun concept with business? Because if it's fun, it doesn't feel like work, and I think that's the other part too.
Oh yeah, like redefining. That's one thing I'm so obsessed with right now, is like taking words and like dismantling them, like just ripping them apart and being like, wait, what is the like the definition or the belief around this word that I'm carrying, and does that serve where I'm at now? Because like work, for example, man, just even saying that word, it's like work. Ugh, like right after you're like, oh, now I feel
there's a
heavier.
connotation of it that's really heavy. And that's something that I've been also deprogramming too. Like, for instance, instead of saying like, oh, this is a discipline, I see it as more of a devotion, because devotion has so much more of that nurturing energy, that there's like a beautiful intention. That discipline's really rigid, and there can be a lot of trauma from being disciplined in the past, and I think the power of words are so incredible.
It like lights me up. I'm so obsessed with it right now, where I actually, my current favorite hobby is getting on like searching videos to watch people write words, like typography, in really beautiful fonts. Like isn't that weird? Like I'm so, I know, I'm like, I sit there and just it's like there's so much story behind every single word. And I love that you use that with discipline, because I do that a lot with clients around teaching like content planning, or like creating systems and schedules. I'm like, call it a flow, call everything a loose, intuitive, gentle flow. It changes. It doesn't have to be this like, because we get so boxed in by stuff.
Yeah, and that rigidness too, I think, because so much of business was so male dominant too, energy, and through sex, like male dominant. And now I feel like as there is this massive wave of femme entrepreneurship really coming through, there is more of that softer approach, and there is a lot of that balance of masculine and feminine that's really happening, because we have to be able to have that balance for this new paradigm. It can't be even just all like female energy thing. It has to be a balance to be able to have the wholeness. I like see it as the yin and the yang.
Yep, totally, completely. And I think that's where we tend to slant so much. You can tell we're like we're like a kid just on taking the wheels off the bike, but it's like we're trying to get our balance, but it's very easy to get pulled to one extreme or the other, where I think this new paradigm is definitely calling us to like find that groove in between.
Yeah. So what are some things that you've been sharing with clients that may have been programmed so deeply in that hustle, hustle, hustle to get into that space of alignment and flow?
Man, the one thing that came to mind as soon as you said that was this belief around, in order to get results or in order to make change or make an impact, it has to be really hard. And one thing that I noticed that comes up a lot with clients is when we dig into that of like, why do you believe that? It almost always comes back to, I watched my parents. I watched my parents work to the bone. I literally had a client tell me that this morning. I watched my dad work to the bone. And so that's a deep lineage belief of, especially depending on where your lineage comes from, these beliefs around work can trigger a lot of deep lineage trauma too, of how we view work and how we view just like being able to create what we truly desire or make the change that we desire. Is like, we're going to have to sacrifice ourselves in order to do that, you know?
Definitely. I see that with my family too. And I can see how my parents are totally at that space of burnout, you know? And so that's been the biggest thing that I've had to work through. You know, my mom thinks like, you have all this free time. And I'm like, no, I don't. I'm just in alignment with the things that I know I need to get done, while also the importance of me taking care of myself. Because especially as highly sensitive beings, we need to make sure we have those moments of radical self-care so that we can serve. It's
Yep.
everything. It's
Yep.
everything.
Yeah. Yeah. And a lot of times I think we end up trying to serve or trying to work or do anything from like this ultimate depletion, you know, where we are just so depleted, and it's very triggersome of what kind of results come out of that place. And then it's 10 times harder to get any sort of shift or result from that depletion, because you're pouring from nothing, you know?
Yeah, and then you're dry. And then that's where the manipulation can come in. That's where all the other things, because we're in that scarcity mindset.
Yeah,
And
your shields are down, you
yeah,
know?
totally. And then you lose your integrity sometimes too, because you're like, it's almost like that desperation energy.
Totally, totally. Yeah, I see that a lot. And I totally relate to that, even with just, you know, sometimes when you're in that depletion space, it's almost like you're so reactory, you know, like you react not from a space of alignment. So not from a space of true like pause and hopefully a little bit of reflection before you respond. It's like that instant reaction, where you tend to look back and be like, shit, did I really do that? You know?
Yeah, and then we had to allow ourselves to be gentle because we weren't aware, you know. And I think that's the other thing too is um, there can be this kind of pressure with business that I feel is kind of happening with social media, you know. And people are like, "Oh my God, this person is so much further than I am," or like, "That means I'm unworthy," or there's all these kinds of beliefs and feelings that we end up with our words breaking ourselves down, and we mute ourselves in a way from really showing up. And I think people forget that it's a process. Like, none of us got here overnight. It's been a lot of commitment. It's been a lot of doing the deep inner work. So I want to talk about doing that inner work, and how critical it is. Almost, I feel like it's almost more important doing the inner work than it is doing the external, because when you do the inner work, it will flow. The external will flow.
Yep. Yep. Totally. And that was that's been like my biggest realization as of late, is just the power of presence, the power of intention, and the power of moving beyond the material world, moving beyond the physical world, and really seeing that that which we cannot see is just as important as all the stuff we try to do out here. And that can also get really incredible shift and result, you know, focusing on the inner. Um, and I always look at it as like, you cannot change what you do not face. And so a lot of times the very reasons you might be bumping up against something in any area of life or business is probably due to something within that is creating that stagnant energy. It's like a boulder in the middle of your road, and you can't get to that next level until you work through that.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that was what was the biggest important thing for me to share, you know, with those students was like, start doing your inner work now if you really want, because that's the new paradigm of business. Like that's why I have like the holistic journey, because there is no separation between your business, your personal life, your relationships, your health, your spirituality. Everything is interconnected. And you can't just be weighing on one side without having that teeter. Like you need to be able to find the balance, the strength in all areas, and they all rely on each other.
Yep.
It's a network. It's an energetic network that we gain our energy, we use our energy, we connect through. So it's interesting to see. And I think that's what's really beautiful about business today is that there is a deeper spiritual essence and like part that is really being addressed, you know, and it's really cool to see how I mean, maybe I'm just like so blindsided because of the field that I'm in, being in health and wellness with business. But to see like more and more people aware of their energy centers, seeing more and more people talk about meditation before they go into big meetings, seeing more and more people really like understanding their spiritual health.
Yes. Yeah. And it almost like blows my mind because like I've been running online businesses for 5 years now. And like, even where it's at today compared to just like a couple years ago, I'm like, wow, like
Yeah.
it's so we are seeing the awakening happen in a digital way, which is so cool. And I always think about like, you know, everything that we do within ourselves also is what is being brought into business now, and especially how you brought up, you know, worth and enoughness and comparison and stuff like that. The inner work allows you to almost like strengthen and step into your personal power to the space where that kind of stuff becomes irrelevant, you know, like the comparison or the worry about this or that. The more you do that inner work, the less you even have those thoughts about the
Well, you're
competition.
vibrating higher, right? So
Mm-hmm.
those are all
Yeah.
lower frequency thoughts and
Yep.
beliefs. And so when you're at that higher frequency or vibration,
Not
none
there.
of that can touch you.
Yep. Yeah. And so that's another thing where it's like if you're struggling with those things externally, that's a surefire sign, call in the inner work, because it's going to help you transcend and work through that.
So what would you say would be a good first step for someone to do inner work? Like what would you say if someone's like, I'm feeling stuck, I'm feeling like stagnant?
Yep. The right away, writing, like learning how to hear yourself again. Because your inner voice, your inner guidance system, your intuition, your inner being, whatever you want to call it, it's going to help you kind of pull back those layers. It's going to help you gain clarity. It's also going to help you in direction or anything. But we've become so shut off from being able to be guided in that way, you know, where most of our lives are kind of dictated and guided by all external, you know, everything's external. And so learning how to truly like turn on your inner again. And so with that, the one thing I practice religiously is like automatic writing or writing to intuition, where I literally, I actually have a piece of paper in front of me of this, of like, I will ask myself questions and I will like shut off my brain and just let my actual being answer, you know? And so that's one thing of like distinguishing between what's almost like your ego brain talking, like your ego brain thoughts versus like, is it you? And starting to learn what that is again, because you'll find answers that you probably didn't know were even there. And a lot of it's like bringing that subconscious up to the consciousness again.
Yeah, and what was coming through when you were talking about the ego brain is like that ego brain is kind of what's protecting you, quote unquote, doing its best to protect you, to quote unquote keep you safe, because it's the parts of you that you are already aware of, the parts of you already know. So like in Kundalini Yoga, we talk about it being the negative mind, right? So the negative mind is the second mind, and it takes us 9 seconds from us to get to the negative mind to the neutral mind. And that negative mind is like, I'm not going to walk in the middle of the street as there's traffic coming through, right? Like I'm not, like, it's that protection that is happening. And so we still have that where we're feeling quote unquote protected and safe from what is already known through our, just through our psyches, in a way of programming of like, this is known, this is known, this is known. But then there's that deeper understanding of your intuitive hit, that gut feeling, allowing that to lead and to trust and to know that that is your true internal compass.
Yep. Yep. Yeah. The one thing I do a lot is I'll try to like literally have dialogue with more ego brain versus have dialogue in conversation with inner being, and notice the difference even in how I physically feel in my body. And that's another powerful thing of like connecting to, as you're trying to do inner work, really truly connecting to the sensation and the energy that is in your body and noticing how that feels. Because normally when you're in that high beta ego brain where your thoughts are just like crazy and probably really dictating you, your body, if you truly like embody yourself again, you're probably like this, like so tense, so full of fear, anxiety, stress. So you can start creating that understanding of what it feels like to be out of your body, probably not connected to the inner, versus then tuning in into that inner of like what it feels like to connect to intuition and be in that space. And it's like it feels a lot softer in that space. So just noticing that difference, you know.
It's that nourishing, like letting you know it's safe. It's like kind of what I'm seeing is like the baby bird flying out of the nest, like taking its first flight, you know, and just trusting that and allowing that space to be feeling real, feeling whole, feeling connected to something greater than our minds that are so conditioned. Like I teach a lot about the subconscious. You were talking about the subconscious, how that's formed by the age of 7. So that's, again, picking up all the habits of our parents. You know, we saw at the age of 7, maybe we were raised by our grandparents and our parents were working, or we were just brought to daycare or nanny or whatever. And we're seeing the hustle of our parents. And that is being formed of like, oh, this is what success looks like. Oh, this is what it looks like to build the business. Oh, this is what I have to understand. And this is like, all right, here we go. This is it. And it's not.
Yeah, I know. It's so eye-opening, honestly, especially thinking I have a niece who she's actually about to turn 6 this week. And I think about it all the time when I'm with her, especially because I'm like, man, she's in these moments, she's in these years that she is just this like massive sponge and just downloading and downloading and down, you know, and it's like, oh, it could you imagine what it would be like if we taught this stuff and like from an early age or taught it to parents?
That's my passion, girl. That's my mission right there. That's exactly what my mission is. Like, I want to bring this awareness into people now, either if they have young children or if they're not, but they want to be mothers or contributors to society. Like, generating and cultivating that conscious generations, and the conscious generations to come starts with us on the individual level. It's like, that's why I think I push so much about the subconscious, is because it is everything. And the subconscious doesn't even know the difference of like media versus what's actually happening. You know, when you're watching these war movies and all these other things, or the brain doesn't know the difference. So that trauma is still stored. And I think that's what's led us to the world that we're kind of experiencing right now, is just understanding that the brain has just picked up so much of the sponge, you know. And I feel like as millennials, we were kind of like test babies. Like, I really do. And I feel like that's why we've kind of rebelled. And I think that was part of the resurgence of psychedelics and like the real strong yoga movement and everything coming back, was because we were the first generation of media, that really was born into it. Like us as millennials will be the last generation to remember what life was like before the internet, which is
So
crazy.
That makes me feel old just even saying that,
I know. Like, I just like, what about dial-up? You guys don't even know dial-up on AOL. Like when you had to dial up to go on or download a song on Napster for like 3 days on dial-up, and no phone calls were able to come through because you had to download that one song. All these things, that I feel like that's why I'm so passionate about our generation. And it's cool to see a lot of our generation building their own businesses and actually living their lives, and people retiring at their 30s, which is like amazing.
I know it is. And it's so hopeful, and I think that's one thing I hold on to a lot is that kind of focus, because it is sometimes also challenging to be hopeful just with the dynamic of where we're at right now as a
programming of a collective.
Yeah. And so we're like smack in the middle. So we're witnessing we're like seeing that vision of like, oh, look where we could go. Like, seeing that, and it's hopeful, but we're also seeing all this collective shadow and all this dirty stuff coming up. And so it's like that mucky in between time.
Definitely. So what would you say about like between the ancestral and the cultural and our own personal and all these different things that we have to navigate through in this world today that is bringing up a lot of this collective manifestation of like the icky stuff that we're kind of navigating through right now? Like, this is a very wild time to be alive.
Yeah, it's been eye-opening, and I think it's made me so like even more passionate about the inner work, just seeing like the darkness and the shadow that has come up and it's smack in our face. We can't really ignore it at all. Has also like given such a beautiful gift to like call in this inner work in a whole new depth and way, because we have to. And that's kind of where I feel with a lot of this is like, it's not really a negotiable thing. It's we have to, and
Totally.
it's necessary. And it's something that we can't bypass and we can't ignore or love and light away or anything, because just going to call it out because we can't, and we can't. And that I say that with so much love because, man, it's easier to ignore it, isn't it? It's easier to be indifferent or to, filter, block out the shadow, but it doesn't change anything.
Definitely. No, I mean, I've called out people before who are like spiritual leaders and they're all love and light, but the mastery comes from being willing to dive into the dark. That's where the true mastery comes in, because that love and light is just that spiritual bypassing. That has been such a huge theme for me this year, like talking about on the podcast and in conversations, is just seeing the spiritual bypassing. And I think it's maybe because I've done so much shadow work in my life and I do a lot of trauma work. And I mean, I'm doing this whole like 500 people are joining me for Mending the Lineage right now that are doing ancestral healing, And so those are the things that need to be done in order to transmute and make space for more of what we want. Because if we keep bypassing, if we keep ignoring, then the energy is just going to continue to synergize and grow.
Yep. Yeah. And I get really fired up about it too. I don't know if you get like that, but I almost get like pissed where I'm like, no, we're not bypassing,
Yeah,
like I get
really irritated. It's like,
me too.
You're here to lead, but you're bypassing what's actually happening by love and lighting it or wearing like cute yoga clothes. Like, wake the fuck up. Like,
I know, man.
Shit is happening.
Yeah. And it I think a lot of times too, it's challenging. Also, kind of going back to what we were talking about before in terms of like the masculine business way and stuff like that. I think a lot of times, especially with the shadow, we're in that place, especially for like leadership of like, but I shouldn't talk about that in my business. It could hurt my business. You know, that whole mindset of like, that could damage me. It's such an ego focused type of thing, but it is also something that unfortunately we're seeing in the spiritual communities, which is also very eye opening. And another piece of shadow coming out, you know,
Totally.
like never ending, the layers coming back. But I think it's something that we can approach and we can sit with and we can work through in a way that truly is in the lens of what we want to see shift and change. But we got to sit with it. We have to.
Well, we have to, otherwise it's going to continue to be passed on to the next group and then the next group and then the next group where like we're seeing it. Let's like fucking put on our big girl panties on and like work through it and
unpack it. Yep.
Yeah. And it's not that like we even have to lone wolf it, because like, for instance, here's two of us right here. We don't have to do it alone. There's many people, many spiritual leaders who are feeling this, like not just you and I. And so this is where the Aquarian age energy of collaboration and community and connection really comes through to be like, hey, this is your strength. I'm not so strong in that, but this is my strength and you may not be as strong at that. So let's kind of create this big mastermind together, and with the intention of transmuting these shadows, because we also need to remember that all shadow, all darkness is the absence of light.
Yep, exactly. And I think it's something that is a lot easier to bypass when you try to do it alone. And that's one thing I know for me, if I don't have somebody calling me out, whether it be somebody like triggering me in a post by calling out, you know, qualities of myself that I'm doing, or, you know, just anything that, like, if I'm not being triggered to actually do the work, I'll be like, I don't know. I'll try to bypass it, you know? And so that accountability, that support, that just being open to dig through this kind of stuff, it's necessary.
Yeah. And it's more than just about leadership. It's like, how do you lead? Right? Because it's not about you as a one individual, but how are you leading? How are you leading? Right? And that's what we have to understand, is that how are you leading? How are you teaching?
Yep. And I get really, really passionate, especially around this topic in regard to like being really inclusive rather than exclusive with this kind of stuff, because especially when you're stepping in to do the inner work, I think it's really important to be that leader and to step into like your light leadership in a way that creates a big enough container for anybody and everybody, you know, like really allows
Definitely.
you to be totally exclusive to all. And that sometimes I think is challenging. And sometimes you have to work through your own inner stuff to see why you're not being inclusive.
It's happening for you. It's an opportunity for you to get real. It's an opportunity for you to address. It's an opportunity for you to be like, oh shit, like I need to reevaluate something. Like, let me get off my high horse for a bit. Let me humble myself.
And that's a big thing right there about the like humility and being humble enough to admit when you mess up, or when you're not doing justice to the collective, or when you're too focused on me instead of we. Like these kinds of things, man, I question myself question myself daily of what is my intention here? Why am I doing this? Who am I doing this for? Is the intention pure? Is it me focused, or is it we, you know, like really in those are inner work things of like calling yourself in
and being willing to call yourself out too.
Yep. Yeah. And it's hard, you know, and it is, in comes the ego brain, you know, like trying to be like, no, because we don't want to attack ourselves, but sometimes
of course
we have to.
It's the tough love sometimes, you know? And so I think that goes a lot with like the sugar coating, you know, like if we've been sugar coating it too much of like, no, like I'm gonna kick my ass into gear, you know, like I need to admit like the real deal. Like I want to be the real deal. I'm not trying to live up to, especially with a brand, right? Like I'm not trying to live up to this image. I am becoming me, like me as my fullest authentic expression. And being willing to admit my defeats, being willing to admit when I've fallen, being willing to admit when I fucked up, being willing to admit when I could have done better. That takes courage.
Totally does. And I think it's something that's such a beautiful thing too, to bring up, of like allowing yourself to be and also feel all parts of yourself, you know, because I think that especially in the digital age and social media and stuff, it's really easy to fall into that trap of like, oh, I should only show this part of myself. I should only show like the lighty part, you know, love and lighty part or something.
Because it's not aligned with my brand.
Yeah, and it's like, hold on, man, fall off brand and just show the truth behind things. I love the thought of like doing the inner work, but doing it out loud and sharing it and living that practice, because that is one of the best ways you can spark others to start. Is just, you don't have to like preach and, you know, yell or push it down people's throats. Be a container, you know, hold space, share.
That's when you become the medicine man or the medicine woman, right? And I know for me, like I think that's what's been part of my success with my work, is just like full on crying or full on admitting or full on transparency, because it brings that relatability factor that other people are looking for, where it's like, oh my God, like I'm not alone. Like Sabrina's having a really shitty day. Like that gives me permission to be okay that I'm having a shitty day too, and that I don't have to beat myself up.
Oh, and it's such, especially going into like that unprogramming and stuff, we got to keep in mind with whatever, you know, image we're trying to portray, whether it be in personal life or business or anything, the image you're portraying is basically what you're teaching others, whether you're saying it or not, you know. So if you're showing all perfection, all love and light only, but not focusing or feeling into any of the other spaces that also create your wholeness, you're going to start making others believe that they're not enough or they're too much, or they're this or that, or they're broken or whatever, because they have these whole other pieces of them that you're not showing. So it must be wrong that they have it, you know? And it's so sharing those vulnerabilities, and your indifferences and your quirks and the little things of being a human being, that allows others to start being their fullness too.
Totally. And I think that's the massive shift that's happening with business. Like that right there is like, you're safe to be you. You are safe to like take a break. You are safe to fill up your cup. You are safe to have that difficult conversation with someone. You're safe to speak your truth.
Yeah. And it's, total liberation, you know, like total liberation, that once you start that, again, it's raising your vibration, it's raising you up, it's going to strengthen you in such a way that, again, those other things that normally might have triggered you or dropped you out of your space of alignment, they're just not there anymore, you know?
Totally. And that goes what was coming through. I was just seeing like soil, root chakra, right? Because again, that goes back to the subconscious. Yep. Safety is like root chakra, and that's developed between your subconscious ears that are being developed. And so that takes that you doing that work brings nourishment to the soil of the seeds that you've planted. So you have these really abundant, healthy fruit of your labor that you're putting in. So that's a huge part of the willingness, you know, to go into those icky places, the willingness to push the envelope and to really take that leap and get out of the comfort zone.
The one thing I was just thinking about that too, especially with like thinking about it as like going into those icky spaces, is I hear this a lot from clients and stuff, of like they're nervous to go into the shadow, or they're scared, you know, where it's almost like they avoid it even though they know they need to, because it's really intimidating. And one thing that helps me a lot, going back to words and stuff, is like shifting how I even like feel about shadow, of like shifting it and seeing that it's just as awesome as light, you know, that, so taking the definition or the label around that and reworking it so that it doesn't feel as heavy or overwhelming to enter into it.
Definitely. Yeah. And that shadow is a lot of like, the seeds are growing in the dirt, underground, under the lights. Without those shadow moments, when you allow yourself to go into the shadow, that's where your growth happens.
Yep, you start breaking through the soil,
Yeah.
and oh my God, I love it. Oh, it's such, I always get like really excited when I notice that it's time for me to like really go deep. Like if I can tell there's something that needs to be worked on, I get, maybe I'm like super emo, I don't know, but I get like really excited. I'm like, oh, this is good. I love that like dark and, it's like,
so it's amazing because like you're in like what I'm thinking as a millennial, like my emo stages that were really strong was like when my sacral was being developed, and that is so much of your creativity and your generation. That's what you're generating. So I think that's why like we all had our emo phases going into like solar plexus, like sacral into solar plexus, that kind of bridge of like, we're using that jerk, that emo, the emotions to like bridge through, to cut through. Yeah.
Oh, I love that. I love that.
It's like my head, like, even though I'm not a music journalist anymore, I still think of those.
Like going into that. Yeah.
Yeah. The music and how that has made an impact in my life, my whole life,
Totally. Same with me. That's what I was like envisioning of like, in this time of year too, is when I'm like in my head, I'm like so deep, I forget where I'm at. And, I always listen to like old music that I used to listen to, and I get like in the zone.
Yeah. Well, one of my best shows I ever went to last year with my sister and my cousin, we saw Dashboard Confessional, and I was 15-year-old Sabrina was losing her mind.
Oh, it's so fun.
Singing all the emo songs at the top of my fucking lungs, just allowing that inner child, that inner teenager in me to heal. That's part of the healing work too, is being able to dive in.
Yeah. And
years.
Yeah. And like, just to even think about it in the realm of like, creativity, that is that like, you're especially thinking about planting those seeds in the soil and stuff. If like you are creating that doesn't have to be something you have to avoid or fear. Whatever you do in there is you're going to see that external creation from that. And that goes within anything, personal life that you're doing, or that you're doing going into collective shadow. Any of the stuff you're unpacking, you also have that shadow side that creates, and that's awesome.
Yeah. And I think like, as we're in the energy of like death with winter, at least here in the Northern Hemisphere, like what are we willing to die, And I think for me, I'm willing to allow to die the old outdated patterns and beliefs that I have been carrying on for so long, that have been quote unquote safe, and protective, right? Based off of my ego mind. I'm ready to let that go and take more of those leaps of faith, and to trust and to see the unfolding.
I'm like so right in that same space of just like, I'm done, and it's like,
why am I holding on to this anymore? It doesn't serve. And there's no shame of carrying it as long as we have, and knowing that like it served its purpose and now it's time to move forward.
Yep. Yeah. And you have to get into that realm of like refusal energy of literally refusing to continue. Otherwise it's like, you'll be very quick to jump back into.
And even more than just a refusal, it's a choice. It's a decision, right? Because it's like, it's a decision that I say no. Like it's honoring a boundary in that way of like, this will not take, because there's a difference between a boundary and a barrier.
Mm-hmm.
I talk about that a lot in Thrive. Like there is a difference between a boundary and a barrier. A boundary is saying the no thank you, and a barrier is the wall that you put up to keep you playing small, to keep you stuck in the castle.
Yep. Yeah, I love that, because it is, and that boundary is a total choice, and you have to get to that place of willingness to make that choice, or else it's going to be a very loose boundary.
Right. And do you feel, I don't know, I want to ask you, because like I feel like this has been happening. Like I said, I feel like spiritual bypassing for sure has been a massive topic this year, But I feel like in the past recent years, boundaries have been really coming up too, because I feel like we weren't really taught boundaries because our parents didn't really have boundaries. And the martyrdom and all of that, that's kind of ancestral and deep in our DNA, that's kind of all coming up of like, this is bullshit. This doesn't serve me. I'm willing to choose differently.
Yeah. Oh my God. Boundaries have been uh, really big for me.
Right?
Especially the past 6 months. Like, real. And if I'm honest, like I've never even focused on boundaries until this year, and I'm 33 years old. So there it goes to show that like it was not taught.
Yeah. But what a
Yeah.
beautiful thing that we get to go through this now to hold that space to teach the next generations.
Yeah.
Like I said, I was walking around my college campus yesterday and they were talking about boundaries. And I was like, fuck, if I knew that when I was like 19, 20 years old, like imagine where I'd be now. But this is just how the life has unfolded. So it's all happened as it should. So there's no shame, but having that deeper awareness, it's really amazing.
Yeah, I get so fascinated with it too, because I always think about it in the realm of like wherever you choose to put those boundaries or choose to do the deep healing and release work, you're also making that decision and that choice for anybody who comes after you in your lineage and anybody who was before you. You are doing massive healing on so many levels, that like, to me, that's more empowering to do the work than anything else, is to be like, no one else is gonna, and at least I can contribute to not continuing this cycle.
I get to be the pattern disruptor.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah, totally. That was my intention with doing Mending the Lineage for the holidays. I just wanted, I'm sick of hearing the story of people like being triggered around the holidays. Like this is, especially with the world we're living in right now. And so it was like, how can I step up and hold this space for everyone that's coming through, and helping them heal 15 generations, because you're also living in the one now, right? So you've got the 7 generations behind you, the 7 generations before you, and the generation of the now. And it takes your willingness, it takes your devotion of yourself and how you choose to live your life. It takes the humbleness to approach and appreciate like the lineage of what brought you to what you have now, and it's just really, I don't know, like, yes, there's a lot of shit going on in the world, but it's also, to me, it feels like a really powerful time to be alive as well.
Oh, I would not change anything, honest. And that's another thing that I always hold on to, especially when like shit is just hitting the fan, is I always think about it's necessary. Change is beautiful, awesome, sometimes very challenging and very hard, but it's always necessary. And we're witnessing that firsthand of a very necessary upheaval and just total transformation.
And after the chaos comes the order. And so that's what's happening right now, is all this chaos, and what you can do to contribute to approaching the order of the chaos is to vibrate at a higher rate, honor yourself, the boundaries, admitting truth of like where we fucked up or where we could have done better, taking action to do better, educating, and embracing and like enjoying the moment with gratitude and appreciation and humility. I don't know. That's what I just feel like all of this is a call for right now, is just humility and embracing and honoring and respecting. And I mean, I'm seeing it right now with my whole state on fire. Like my whole state is on fire. I've had friends who have lost everything, and it's been a really challenging week, because working in a shamanic practice and feeling the essence and the energy and the people, I've been like crying every day. But this is like a massive wake-up call for us to appreciate again what is beyond the material world, and to remember the basics of life, the abundance that comes from within that is generated without, and to remember what's actually important in this thing we call life.
And that I think that's the most important thing to come back into center, is in every single space of like what is truly important, because it's really easy to lose track of that. And I think that is definitely a call to come back into really prioritizing what is most important.
Yeah. So let's ask some lightning round questions. What is most important to you right now?
Right now, I hands down presence, just being like my main intention every day is how can I slow down time by just truly being in every single moment.
I love that. Where do you see the future of business going?
Right now, I am obsessed with anything that allows me to start speaking more. So I just did my
Thanks
first.
for being here.
Yeah, exactly. But primarily, I want to build some workshops and some events that can be created as pop-ups that I can travel and go into specific, cities and communities and do those pop-up events.
I'm feeling that too. I hear you. What would you say is a really powerful animal totem that's supporting you and guiding you right now?
Wolf. Hands down, I actually ended up getting a wolf tattoo this past year. It has, funny enough, it's actually my father's totem as well.
Wow.
And just so much energy with wolf. But the funny thing with that is also snakes lately, but I've been seeing them everywhere.
Your life force, your kundalini, babe.
Yeah. And so that's been something recently, which is really bizarre because I've always been very terrified of snakes.
Wow. Way to go.
Yeah.
What do you see happening with your mentorship program that you have, with your membership program, Align and Flow? Like, where do you see that impacting lives?
I see. So the main intention with that and with creating the membership, and I do monthly portals with new fresh content every month. My number one goal with that, starting it, was to create an all-inclusive environment that was affordable for literally anyone. So the price tag is extremely low. It has so much training and value for both business and life clients. And so my intention for it is to really truly just get it in front of as many people that are ready and need it, because it's something that is a catalyst for so much. And so it's really exciting to think about what can birth from that. And the community that already is a part of it is absolutely just like on fire, and seeing them expand and wake up is just, it shows me what is possible, just with expanding that and helping more people with it.
Amazing. What would be like 2 to 3 books that you would recommend for people to read who are?
I will say, I'm going to say 2 by the same person, because those are the last 2 that I recently read that really shifted a lot for me. And that is The Power of Now and A New Earth by Eckhart. And so those are like life-changing. And then I always tend to recommend very simple, good beginner books of Light is the New Black or Rise Sister Rise, just because I think those are
Rebecca Campbell.
Yeah, I think they're good catalysts for starting.
Amazing. Yeah, it's actually funny because I found a version of The Power of Now, an Australian copy, in the hostel I was staying at in Thailand, like years ago when I was like first embarking on my journey. And I read it into like my 24th birthday. Like I finished reading it on the train as I like turned 24. And the power of Now and A New Earth. I have an audiobook, and I bought it so years ago. So sometimes when I'm listening to music on my iPad, one of the chapters will come up and it's like, oh shit, this is like what I need right now. And it always comes through. So I totally agree with you on those 2 books. Super.
Yeah.
Amazing. What would you share with younger Natalie?
Calm down. First thing that came to in my head, calm down. I've always had some anxiety, just a little bit of anxiety maybe. But I think we live in such a fast-paced, go, microwave society of everything's got to be now, that I would tell her to just calm down, to seek calm and seek peace.
Amazing. I love that. And what is coming up for you right now that you want to share that is just kind of coming from your heart? through our conversation or whatever else is kind of arising right now?
Yeah, I would say what I tend to always lean back on is your alignment is the best medicine you can possibly give yourself in the world. So do whatever you truly can do to get into your space of alignment, which usually means you have to start with some inner work and some unpacking and releasing to make space for that alignment, and to understand that in order to get into that flow space, the inner shadow work's gotta come out to play for a little bit.
Feeling into that.
Yep.
Amazing. And babe, where can we find more of you and Align and Flow?
I hang out primarily on Instagram. I'm under I am Natalie Brite. Website's nataliebritecoaching.com. So super easy. And everything about all things Align and Flow are both on my Instagram and my website.
Amazing. Well, I could talk to you all day. Like I said, I was so excited to have this conversation with you. Because, like, I don't know, like I said, since I saw you started popping up on my feed, I was like, this girl is a homie. I can tell. Like, I feel.
Oh, yeah. I know. Before we got on here, even, I was like, man, I feel like we should actually be in a room together. Like, that's the kind of.
Well, this is our seed, right?
Yep.
So
yep.
This is our seed. And what we're going to do, we're going to host an event together down the line someday. And that's my big vision. Like, I have so many powerful babes and friends that are just doing amazing things. And I just want to host like a beautiful, like, retreat that
get it together,
everyone together and share. And yeah, that's like my big vision too, is just continue to create that space. And so this isn't the last of us together.
No, definitely not.
Well, thanks everyone for tuning in. Go check out Natalie and go check out Align and Flow if you're really ready to activate that alignment within you so that you can really serve and share your medicine with the world, because we need you right now more than ever. Like, we are in a time where there's no more playing small. We need to rise up, we need to show up, and we need to step up fully. So I thank you so much, Natalie,
thank you
and for being here. And go check her out and let us know what you thought. And we'll be looking forward to hearing from you all soon. Have a great one. Take care.